All right, let's go through the demo for exercise 6-1. You're going to enhance the Town Hall homepage again using CSS. So the image here on the right is from your exercise in the back of chapter 6. And this is what we are going for. This is what we have. Let me extend this just a little bit. If I open up this page, and you'll see that we have our mission, then the speaker of the month, we have an image, some more text, ticket packages, and then all the season's guest speakers are listed down at the bottom, and then we have our footer. If we look at the HTML, you'll see that that really kind of follows the flow of what we have in our HTML. Because as I've mentioned before, when you mark up the HTML for the page, it literally will just follow in a row exactly in the order that you have it in there. But the beauty of CSS is that we can alter what the flow of the page looks like by putting in some CSS. So notice we're going to have the guest speakers that are down here at the bottom are going to kind of float up to the top left. We're going to have our mission on the right. The speaker of the month is going to be on the right. Our ticket packages will be on the right, but then our footer will remain where it's at the bottom. So we're going to use CSS to float and move these sections around. So this is really the beauty of it. All right, so you're going to want to, I'm going to shorten this a little bit. You're going to want to open up the files here, just like it says, your Town Hall 1 CS6 C6 index.html, which I have that open here. And then you want yours in your styles folder, C6 main CSS. And so I have that right here. Okay. And it says that note in the HTML file, you have all the code that you need. We saw on the page, we have everything. So we're just going to focus on the CSS and moving those pieces around, a little bit of practice there. All right, so I'm going to get rid of these instructions here, move some things around, bring in our the rest of our instructions, and we're going to begin looking at our CSS. Okay, so number 3, it wants us to enhance the CSS file so it provides the formatting shown above, meaning in that picture. So in the CSS file, I'm going to jump over to this file here. We're going to enhance the style rule for the body. So looking in our body section, so the width is 800. So on line 12, let's look in here. We have our width is normally set at 600. We're going to change that to 800. We want to set the width of the section to 525 pixels. Okay, so let's go back here. So we're setting the width to 800. The section, if we scroll down, we're going to set the width of that on line 50 to 525 pixels. We're going to float it to the right. So use the float and then set that property to right. We're going to set the width of the aside. Okay, so we're going to keep going down here. We have our aside area. We're going to set that to 215 and float that to the right. And then we're going to use the clear property in the footer. So down here, we're going to clear both, meaning we don't want the footer to accidentally float up to the right side with everything else above it. We've got the aside floating, we've got the section floating. If we don't do anything, our footer will just naturally float up there. So we have to clear both, meaning clear both sides of that. We want it to just stay down at the bottom where it is. Okay. And then lastly, delete the style rule for the H1 heading. So when you go up to here, so if I'm on my starting exercises folder, we would have a header 1, but we want to get rid of that. Let's see, then test it. The column should start to be taking shape. So you can see that. Click on the lightning bolt to open that up in your browser if you need to, if you haven't yet. And then you should see it starting to take place. So I'm going to refresh this and expand. So we should see some things happening here. Okay. Once I get on the actual index, I'm going to open that up. Okay. And so these things are floating. Okay. So number 4, to make this look better, delete the left and right padding for the main element. So you're going to go back into your CSS, go into your main, which should be below here. We have our sections. We're going to delete it. We already deleted it, right? Left and right padding there. Okay. Let me get back up here to our header. Okay. So then we want to set the left and bottom padding for the aside to 20 pixels. So go back down to our aside. It's a lot of going back and forth. Okay, and then we want to set the padding to 20 pixels, right? Yes, 20 pixels. Set the bottom padding for the section to 20. Okay, so if you remember in our, let me see if I can pull it up here really quickly. Our learning activities, let's bring it down here so you can see. On our, let me go to this, yeah, on our screen right here, the learning activities. I have this clock here for you, kind of like follow it clockwise. The first number is your top, so your top padding. The second is your right, so what's happening on the right. The third one is your bottom. The fourth one is the left. So following along in the clock, top, right, bottom, left. Okay, like north, that would be east, south, west, top, right, bottom, left. So when it asks us to get rid of this, to set the left and bottom padding to 20 pixels, top, right, bottom, left, we do these two. Okay. Change the right and left padding for the section to 20 pixels. So go up to section, same thing, padding right here. You can also delete the clear property for the main element and then test it again. To make the CSS easier to read, change the selectors for the main elements so they refer to the section or the aside element as appropriate, and reorganize these style rules. Be sure to include a style rule for the H2 headings in both the section and the aside. So section H2, we've got that in there. In the aside, we have an H2 there as well. Then let's see. We're going to, so in the original CSS, we had main here. But what it says is to change the selectors for the main elements so they refer to the section or aside element. So in our solutions, that's why we have our aside or our main, or our section, excuse me, instead of the main elements. Okay, if we go back to our index page, let's look at that. So the reason we removed the main indicators in our CSS, back over here, main here, this whole section here is for main. The reason we did that is because when we are looking at this as a whole, we have inside our main section, our main element, excuse me, excuse me, inside our main elements, we have this section that goes all the way down here that handles all of the ticket packages, the speaker of the month, and all of that. And then our aside has the guest speakers. Okay, so when we set a CSS where we're going to be moving these portions around, it doesn't help us to just apply a CSS to the whole main section there. So that's why it said to remove main, and let's just focus on where we want section to go and where we want our aside blocks to go. Okay. All right. Let's see. Number 5. I think we did that. Nope, we did that already. Okay. So then number 6, add a style rule for the H1 element that sets the font size to 150%. Okay, so let's go back into our main, and it says for the H1 element, so H1, let's see where that is, 150% right here. So section H1, font size 150%. And you're going to have for the aside, you don't have to worry about that because you don't have an H1. Okay. And then you're going to set the top padding to 0.5 em right here. Remember, top, right, bottom, left. And then the bottom padding right here to 0.25, and sets the margins to 0, margin 0. Number 7, float the image in the article. So let's go to article image, and we're going to float that to the right. We are going to set its top, bottom, and left margins so there's adequate space around it. So we don't want the content to be right up next to the image itself. So we need to give it a slight little margin. So again, it follows the top, right, bottom, left. So just fill in whatever kind of, you could play around with that to see what looks good. And then add a 1 pixel black border to the image so the white in the image doesn't fade into the background. Okay, so it kind of sets it apart. So that's what's happening there when we say border, 1 pixel all the way around, solid and black. Okay, then you make any final adjustments. Look at the use developer tools if necessary that we learned in demo 4. But you should be good to go. And then when you look at the page, you should have things moved around where you need. Okay.